I wanted to go back. You mentioned that you have a co-founder, Justin. Um, how do you know when you're about to work with someone that, considering it's your baby, that they're going to take it and work with you the same way you would want to work? How do you
So,
find that person?
yeah, so that's such an interesting question because you're talking to somebody who usually wants to do it all, right? Like I'm the guy that's like, I'm going to do it because I'm going to do it right. The difference with Justin versus anybody else, and the reason that I immediately went to him with this idea and like it had connected with him is like I know in the past, right? He had mentioned to me, man, if only we could do X, Y, and Z better. And so I already knew that he had been thinking about that idea. But mostly, I had this sort of huge benefit that when I was at Terminus, we acquired Justin's company. He's previously CEO of a company called Ramble Chat. That's, big heavy drift intercom competitor. And so I got to see what it was like for him to come into a new company after being acquired. He took over a huge portion of product development as well as me. So we worked side by side for 2 years, including with Jason Deegan, who's our head of software development here at Saleo now, all together, all running 6 different products across Terminus' platform, having to work together for nearly 2 years together before we launched Saleo. And so I knew how he worked. I knew how his brain thought. I'd seen him, how he approached different meetings, both tough ones and simple ones. And, the whole gamut, right? Everything from layoffs to massive successes and everything in between. And so I knew, like, in my head when I had this idea, so Justin's the kind of guy I want because I know how he handles himself in a million situations. There's no surprises for me. If I was doing it net new and I didn't know anybody, it would be probably a much harder process for me.
And even though you knew Justin, did you have a hard time, or how did you handle the concept of losing control over something?
So for me, I knew that I was hell bent on product, right? Like when I focus on something, I focus really hard. And I knew that I didn't want to do the job as CEO. So literally, like the second I called him, I was like, "Hey, I'm going to do this company, and not only that, I want you to be, let's split this up." And he was like, he was sort of like breaching that subject. I was like, "I'm going to just cut you off there. Like, I want you to be CEO. I don't want to do those activities, the fundraisers, all of those parts, right? I want to be hell bent on building this product and having that free time." And so for me, it wasn't about losing control. It was about giving up the things that I didn't think would make the company successful if I ran them. Like I have experience. I've raised money before for companies. I've developed product before for companies, and where I was always successful was in developing product and the day-to-day going out and fundraising and negotiating those deals. Like Justin's an expert level sales guy. And I was like, I knew he was the one I would want negotiating those parts. And so it sort of necessitated that role, and his experience having sold his company right to a company like Terminus and have been CEO and writing a ship for a few years there. Just sort of, it was a natural choice.
Okay. And right now, like when you first started, it was just the two of you. Right? You had a head of engineering, right? So
we hired Alexis Svetlyakov, who was a contractor with us at Terminus.
okay.
Had worked previously with Justin at his company Ramble Chat, and we brought him on as a co-founder and as the sort of the engineer for the entire product.
Okay, so you were the vision person for the product. Alexi is the hands-on getting it done. You're doing a lot more, like, from the marketing side as well. I see, like you have a webinar. You have webinars monthly, almost at least monthly.
Exactly.
So you guys do you organize that. You do a lot of that, and so that makes me feel like, all right, you gave up some control to someone else to do the product, even though you're hell bent on doing the product. How did that go?
Yeah, so it's really different. So for Alexi, he was the engineer that everybody looked up to at Terminus as being one of the smartest and best. So like there was very little hesitation to say, "Hey, I'm putting my baby in this person's hands." Right? It's like, I have a car I love, and there's very few people I would want to drive it. But if you told me that I could have Max Verstappen drive my car, right, I'm going to hand the keys to him because I'm like, my baby's going to be okay, right? And so it was very similar with Alexi that we pitched the idea to him, and in his opening email back to us, he wrote like 15 ways that this idea could be accomplished, and all of them were ones that we had talked about. Like he was not off that path, and so handing that over became really easy. And then product's a lot more than just the engineering and programming, right? Like there's UI, UX, how are people going to, the human computer interaction sort of part of it. And so it was really nice to have somebody like Alexi who you were like, hey, when he uses a library or he's picking an API or he's picking the framework for the backend, That's not my specialty. It's going to be there. It's going to be scalable. He's the guy that's already thought about those versus having to take time out of my time to be like, okay, well, let's research this. Do we use Lambdas? Do we use Fargate? Are we an AWS shop or a cloud shop? How are we going to set up this infrastructure, right? Having somebody like that to back your ideas frees up a lot of time and a lot of research that like I could have possibly done, but would be nowhere near as good as having an experienced engineer do it. So everybody sort of falls in place.
Okay. And in terms from like a customer perspective, you working with customers initially, you had 3 or 4 people on the team that are doing everything. What was I know you mentioned Justin, he was a salesperson. He's a CEO salesperson. Were you involved with customer interaction? Was Alexi, who did the sales engineering part of the process?
Yeah, early Salio days, and even in fact still today, typically we're doing a call. We have the Jim Tosi, who's our senior account executive. Typically it'll be Justin or I demoing while Jim presents and sort of makes the content. We're planning on hiring a solutions engineer probably very early next year to take over a huge portion of the demoing, but it's sort of always been us, and there's a reason for that. We a couple different times in our history have posted for a solution engineer and then pulled it back, because what we've realized over and over again is that we want to be the people demoing right now, because the questions that we get, like we're demoing to solutions engineers. And so the first questions that come out of their mouth after you're done presentation are the next 10 product features we're going to want to build, right? It's like, oh, but can you do this? Oh, would it be really cool if you did that? Is there a way to do X, Y, and Z? And all of those are incredibly valuable product learnings that we come out of almost every sales cycle with 10 to 15 new product features that we then put in a list. Like we use ClickUp for task management and organization. We have a set roadmap, right? Which is like, hey, this is what we're going to do now through March of next year, right? You can't plan much further beyond that when you're a startup and the market's changing so fast. But we have that set roadmap, and then we have about 1,000 ClickUp items that are categorized to different categories on when should we do this? Should we do this in the future? Should we do this in now? If we see other companies start to do them, we'll sort of track their success and see what's going to happen with them as sort of micro companies to see how the market is overall evolving. But I'll say, back to the idea of giving demos, right? Both Justin and I see the incredible value in being the people presenting the software, should know it best. And so as we onboard, like we've had a few people reach out that would be really phenomenal solutions engineers that we want to bring on, but we want to make sure that we have the time to sort of properly onboard them, right? You don't want to just throw somebody in and say, hey, go demo this software. You want them to join, grow a unique understanding almost at a product officer level of this is what our product is capable of doing, and then match that, because we're not just matching, Salio is so unique that we're not just demoing one piece of software, right? Our software helps you demo your software. And so plugging in and understanding the innate backends and the intricacies of SaaS and software products is incredibly important, and it requires a special solution engineer, because you're not just selling one piece of software anymore. You're selling basically an adapter, almost an API to other people's products.